Pay close attention, because this didn't happen the way people usually imagine. There was no dramatic gasp, no awkward laugh, no loud reaction. It was quieter than that, and way more revealing. The second your name came up, the energy in the room shifted, not enough for everyone to call it out, but enough for everyone to feel it. A half-second pause, a breath that hit too deep, a look that flickered before it could be controlled. Someone wasn't ready to hear your name, and their body gave them away before their mouth could catch up. That's what this message is about. That moment, the moment your presence spoke without you being there. Because what you don't see is how much effort has gone into pretending you no longer matter. How much emotional duct tape has been holding certain situations together. Silence wasn't peace. Silence was protection. And when your name slipped into the conversation, that protection cracked. The person standing next to them felt it immediately. The confusion, the insecurity, the low-key embarrassment. Not because you did anything, but because some connections don't disappear cleanly. They leave a residue, a charge, a memory that refuses to stay buried. And when your name surfaced, it reminded everyone in that space that something unresolved still exists. If this is hitting close to home, drop "I trust the truth" in the comments. Spirit is showing that this reaction didn't come out of nowhere. It was built over time, through quiet comparisons, emotional weight, and things left unsaid. Someone has been trying hard to lock in their position, convincing themselves that consistency equals security, that if they just hold on long enough, everything will feel solid. But stability built on effort instead of truth is shaky by nature. It looks strong, but it's always one moment away from being exposed. And when your name was mentioned, it exposed exactly how much work it's taken to keep everything from slipping. This isn't loud jealousy. This is the discomfort of realizing you're standing in a place that never fully belonged to you. Spirit also points to something important. You didn't force clarity. You didn't chase answers. You didn't demand explanations. You let time do what pressure never could. What others mistook for detachment was actually self-respect. And that matters, because your energy has changed. You're not reactive anymore. You're not seeking validation. You're grounded. And that's why your name hits different now. It lands heavier. It makes people internally check themselves. It forces them to quietly ask, was what I traded worth what I lost? The reaction you didn't see came from someone comparing themselves to a memory they can't compete with. Not because you're better, but because what you shared with that person was real. It was warm, familiar, emotionally safe. That kind of bond can't be recreated through effort or performance. There's a softness attached to you that can't be faked. And when your name came up, it triggered an internal comparison the third party was not prepared for. Their body reacted before their mind could step in. That discomfort was instinctual, because instinct remembers what logic tries to erase. And here's the key takeaway for this part. You're not competing. You're not chasing. Your energy is simply revealing what others have been avoiding. Because next, Spirit reveals why this reaction is still unfolding behind the scenes, and why your absence is actually louder than your presence ever was. Here's what Spirit wants you to really understand. This isn't about someone choosing between people. This is about truth rising without effort. You're not trying to be remembered. You're not doing anything extra. Your presence, past or present, simply exposes emotional reality, and exposure is uncomfortable for people who've been living in denial. That moment of embarrassment wasn't about you personally. It was about being seen, about realizing others noticed the shift, about understanding that the emotional balance in the room changed, and there was no undo button. Spirit shows someone carrying emotional weight they never fully dealt with, responsibilities stacked up, Expectations got heavy. Appearances had to be maintained. And over time, they convinced themselves that endurance meant commitment. But endurance without emotional fulfillment turns into burnout. When your name was mentioned, it reminded them of a version of themselves that felt lighter, less guarded, more open. And that contrast hit hard. You were never meant to chase closure. You were meant to become the reference point, the quiet standard, the reminder of what genuine connection feels like. And that's exactly what's happening now. People around them are picking up on subtle things. The defensiveness, the topic changes, the way your name altered the emotional temperature. Nothing had to be said. Everything was felt. Spirit also highlights the nurturing energy around you right now. You carry a calm confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. That's why you're remembered with both warmth and regret. You represent something natural, not forced, not negotiated, not performed. The third party's discomfort isn't fear of you. It's fear of comparison with something real. They sense they're filling a role instead of truly occupying it. And even if they don't consciously admit that, their nervous system knows. That's why your name shook things up. It disrupted the illusion that everything had settled. Release any doubt about your significance. You didn't imagine this. Energy doesn't react for no reason. Names carry frequency, and yours carries memory, emotion, and unfinished truth. That's why it can't be spoken casually. And timing matters here. You're not being pulled backward. You're being shown how far you've come. Your energy doesn't need proximity anymore. It travels ahead of you. It leaves an impression before you even enter the room. If this resonates, comment, I stand in my truth, because Spirit now reveals something deeper. There's been a long internal negotiation happening, one that never involved you directly, but always revolved around you. Someone tried to replace a feeling instead of understanding it. They believed routines could replace resonance, but routine creates comfort, not intimacy. And when your name surfaced, it cracked that illusion. In the next part, Spirit exposes the consequences of that moment, and why once truth is felt, it can't be unfelt. Spirit brings forward consequence, not punishment, but inevitability. Once something is recognized internally, it starts influencing behavior whether anyone admits it or not. The reaction you didn't see was the start of a quiet unraveling. Nothing dramatic on the outside, everything undeniable on the inside. From that moment on, energy shifted. Conversations felt heavier. Silence got louder. Little moments started revealing what had been carefully contained. Someone has been trying to maintain balance by dividing their attention, effort, and emotional energy evenly, thinking if everything gets enough focus, nothing will fall apart. But balance achieved through division is fragile. It requires constant control, and control is exhausting. Your name disrupted that balance by revealing how much effort it was taking to keep things steady. Afterward, there was an internal replay, a questioning of why the reaction happened so fast, so deeply. And through that questioning, realization started forming, not about going back, but about feeling something they thought was already resolved. Forced closure never lasts. It just waits for honesty to show up. The third party felt the shift too, a subtle emotional withdrawal, a guardedness, a tension without a clear explanation. And once your name had already triggered a visible reaction, it became impossible to ignore the connection. This isn't about bad intentions. It's about misalignment. People can choose paths that make sense on paper while remaining emotionally disconnected from them. Over time, that misalignment shows up as fatigue, frustration, and dissatisfaction that can't be blamed on one thing. You represent emotional honesty, a time when connection didn't need managing. when affection wasn't scheduled, when understanding didn't require explanation. Those experiences leave imprints, and imprints don't disappear. Spirit shows someone achieving milestones while still feeling something's missing. That contradiction is hard to face because admitting it feels like invalidating effort, so it gets suppressed until moments like this bring it to the surface. You're not meant to fix anything. You're not meant to intervene. Your role was fulfilled simply by being aligned. Your growth triggered recognition, and recognition always leads to transformation. Even when resisted, stay grounded. Don't overanalyze every signal. What's unfolding is internal, subtle, and still forming. But once awareness takes hold, it changes everything. If this reflects what you've been sensing, comment, I stay grounded in truth, because what's real will always reveal itself without force, without chasing, without you having to do a thing. At some point, habit stops being enough. The routines still exist. The conversations still happen. The structure looks the same, but something underneath has shifted. What once felt effortless now takes thought. What once flowed naturally now feels calculated. This isn't confusion. This is awareness waking up. And when emotions have been muted for a long time, they don't come back quietly. They come back loud, heavy, and impossible to ignore. Spirit shows that after that moment, there's been a subtle pullback, not intentional, not dramatic, just overload. Emotional capacity has narrowed. Patience runs thinner than it used to. Small things suddenly feel bigger than they should. That's usually the first sign that something inside is out of alignment. Because when someone is living out of sync with their truth, they lose tolerance for pretending. They can't keep performing the same role without strain. The third party feels this shift through what's missing, not through what's said. Less warmth, less spontaneity, less emotional presence. And that absence is way more unsettling than an argument ever could be, because absence doesn't explain itself. It leaves room for interpretation, and interpretation wakes intuition, even in people who usually ignore it. Spirit wants you to know this didn't happen overnight. It's cumulative. Truth has been building pressure internally, and pressure always finds a release. Sometimes that release looks like distance. Sometimes it looks like emotional withdrawal that can't be logically justified, but it always shows up somewhere. There's also a deeper layer forming around identity. Someone is starting to question not just the choices they made, but who they were when they made them, what mattered back then, what they were willing to sacrifice, and whether those values still match who they're becoming now. That kind of reflection messes with a person because it shakes identity, not just circumstances. And identity shifts are uncomfortable long before they're clear. Your name has become symbolic in this process, not an invitation to go backward, but a reminder of emotional honesty, of connection that didn't require negotiation, of something real. Symbols matter because they condense meaning into something simple. Your name carries weight. It can't be diluted. That's why it keeps surfacing unexpectedly. It contrasts too sharply with what now feels strained. The embarrassment that followed wasn't just about that moment. It was about the fear that others might start noticing the same cracks, that they might sense the inconsistency. And when stability is held together by effort instead of alignment, it's always vulnerable. There's also tension growing between logic and feeling. Logic says, everything's fine. Progress is happening. Feeling says, something's missing. When those two clash, tension leaks out through tone, behavior, pauses. You're not meant to decode it. You're meant to stay centered. Because the more centered you are, the clearer the contrast becomes. And contrast brings clarity without you lifting a finger. Spirit is asking you to observe, not engage. to trust, not chase, to stay grounded, because authenticity always has impact, even when it's silent. And next, Spirit reveals why this growing discomfort isn't chaos. It's preparation for something unavoidable. There comes a quiet threshold, one most people never see coming. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's the moment when pretending takes more energy than honesty. And once someone crosses that internal line, everything starts to feel heavier. After the emotional distance set in, after the unspoken tension lingered, ordinary moments began to feel off. Conversations paused where they didn't used to. Responses came slower. Future plans felt less exciting, more abstract. These aren't signs of indecision. They're signs of alignment shifting. When alignment shifts, the body resists paths that no longer feel true, even if those paths once felt safe. For a long time, logic was in charge. Logic said commitment meant endurance, that maturity meant choosing stability over feeling, and logic has its place, but it can't run a life by itself. Emotion eventually demands space, and when it's been silenced too long, it speaks through fatigue, irritation, and emotional absence. The third party is starting to feel this more clearly now. What once looked like stress now feels like emotional withdrawal. What once felt manageable now feels patterned, and uncertainty grows, not from what's said, but from what's no longer felt. When warmth fades gradually, it leaves a void, and voids wake intuition. That moment of embarrassment you didn't witness, that was the first crack, not the ending. Vulnerability, once exposed, leaves a mark. It changes perception. From that point forward, there's been an awareness that something inside is unfinished, not necessarily between people, but within the self. There's also a realization forming that emotional connection can't be manufactured. Effort can sustain structure, but not intimacy. Obligation can maintain appearances, but not presence. That realization creates internal conflict because it challenges the foundation of what's been built. Spirit wants you to hear this clearly. This process is not about going back. It's about acknowledging what was real so it stops unconsciously influencing the present. Acknowledgement removes distortion. Suppression strengthens it. Your role hasn't changed. You're not meant to wait, anticipate, or prepare for conversations that haven't been asked for. Your alignment is the message. Your peace is the signal. That's why this awareness doesn't feel chaotic. It feels steady. You've reached a place where you're no longer reactive. You're anchored. And because you're anchored, you can witness truth unfolding without getting pulled into it. That's growth. There's also a shift happening around self-worth. Someone is realizing they've been negotiating their emotional needs just to keep things smooth, choosing structure over fulfillment. And while that realization stings, it's freeing too, because honesty always opens a door, even if it opens slowly. The third party feels the ground shifting beneath them. Intuition is getting louder. Denial is getting harder. Awareness doesn't force confrontation, but it permanently changes perception. Because once perception changes, behavior follows. And that's where the real movement begins. This is the stage where clarity stops living only inside and starts shaping real life, not through announcements or big decisions, but through consistency, through small shifts that quietly rearrange everything. Once awareness settles, priorities change. Time gets allocated differently. Emotional energy is conserved instead of spent automatically. Someone starts lingering less where they feel disconnected. They engage more selectively. They stop overriding internal signals just to keep the peace. That's not rebellion. It's self-trust coming back online. Routines loosen their grip. Obligations feel heavier. Commitments that relied purely on effort start to feel unsustainable. That heaviness is information. It points directly to where alignment has already changed, even if words haven't caught up yet. The third party experiences this as instability. The familiar rhythm is gone. Predictability fades, and predictability is often mistaken for security. When it disappears, anxiety shows up, not necessarily fear of loss, but fear of uncertainty. This phase exposes the difference between attachment and connection. Attachment wants certainty. Connection wants truth. And when truth starts guiding behavior, attachment feels threatened. There's also an internal boundary forming, a quiet decision to stop disappearing emotionally. Responses become shorter. Emotional labor decreases. Reassurance is offered less, not as punishment, but as preservation. And these shifts are deeply felt by those used to unlimited access. Your presence remains steady. You're not entering the dynamic. You're not influencing it directly. You're simply aligned. And alignment has gravity. It pulls truth toward it naturally. Momentum builds quietly. One honest choice leads to another. One boundary clarifies the next. Over time, the gap between what feels true and what feels tolerated becomes impossible to ignore. Spirit shows imagination opening up, not as planning, but as noticing what feels lighter, expansive, aligned. When imagination shifts naturally, it means the mind is no longer fully invested in maintaining the old structure. The third party becomes more sensitive. They oscillate between reassurance and concern, between optimism and doubt. Uncertainty grows uncomfortable, and discomfort eventually demands resolution. Spirit asks you to stay anchored, not detached, just grounded. Your steadiness keeps the process clean. It allows truth to surface without projection. Aligned movement doesn't rush. It unfolds when readiness meets opportunity, and that moment is approaching. You may notice more calm, less mental noise, small confirmations that you're exactly where you're meant to be. Nothing may be declared yet, but the direction is clear, and clarity has momentum. If this resonates, write, I choose alignment.